Hetepdi Nesut, Unpu Usir Neb Abju, Disenu Peret Heru, Ta Hinquet, Ha Kau, Kau Apedu, Sheshu, Minketu, Het Nebet Neferet Wabet Ankh Netre Im, In Ka In, Imaki, Chadwick Boseman, Ma'akeru, Duau Necheru, Duau Necheru, Duau Necheru.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Comics Cube, and thanks for joining us today as we pay tribute to Chadwick Boseman, the Black Panther. LaMar, what did we just do?
Basically, what we did was, it's commonly just called the Hetepdi Nesu for short. And what it is, it's an offering formula that when someone transitions, a lot of times it's carved into a stone and it's set like at their burial place. And basically, what it entails is offerings that are being brought forth to a netcher or a group of netchers on behalf of the ka of the person who has just transitioned. And so a lot of times when we do our language courses and when we do our other spiritual things, we'll always start with the Hetepdi Nesu. Um, and it's a very important thing because it actually brings not just the people who are giving the offerings closer to the person, it brings them closer to the individual principles that the netchers encompass. So we always like to start with that just to kind of set a base for what we're doing. Even in contemporary time, we do it as with things like this. We always want to start off with that.
Chadwick Boseman tragically passed away last August 28th. And, he's known for many things. One of those things is, of course, playing the Black Panther in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He was diagnosed with colon cancer in 2016, so he played pretty much all of his big roles in those 4 years. Can you talk to me, Justin, about your relationship to the Black Panther character, and how you've consumed him in media, like whether it's comics, cartoons, or whatever? Just basically, like, I know you love the Black Panther, so.
Yeah. So, I'm a collector first and foremost, and one of the things that I wanted to do with my collection was to tackle the Black superheroes. And obviously Black Panther was at the top of that list. So starting with the Jungle Action series, I went through and I collected that one. Then I went to his first signature series. And then from there, just been collecting everything that's come out with him. I've loved the Black Panther story since I got into it, starting with the Who Was the Black Panther. It was a pretty decent story and everything like that. And so I just wanted to continue to follow with him and everything like that. And he's become probably my favorite character in the Marvel universe, for not only because of what he represents, but I'm sorry, a little bit emotional thinking about it now because this is the first time I'm having to talk about it. But I apologize, but it's like I said, it's an emotional time for me. I didn't know Chadwick Boseman at all, but what he did for Black Panther in that role was so iconic. It's just hard to see for him to be gone. It's hard.
Yeah. You have any favorite Black Panther stories before from the comics?
When Ta-Nehisi Coates took over, I think it might have started like maybe volume 6 or volume 7. That storyline was the best because I've been a fan of Ta-Nehisi Coates' writing, and the way he wrote it, he used a lot of elements of African culture that's not really seen in comics. He talked about the Orishas and some of the different African gods. And that kind of, even though it's in a comic book, being able to read it and seeing it puts it into perspective, especially for like Black readers who want to know a little bit about history or to touch on it and everything like that. So I think that was probably my favorite run is the Ta-Nehisi Coates' run.
Yeah. Before we get on to that before I ask LaMar what Black Panther means to him, I just want to talk about Ta-Nehisi Coates. Ta-Nehisi Coates is a very cool guy. And I know this because, and I'm just going to tell this story because this is the right place to tell this story. In December of 2015, Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote me an email thanking me for the Comics Cube website because it helped him write his first comic book. And I had no idea what the hell he was talking about, but I said, thank you, Mr. Ta-Nehisi Coates, sir. And then a year later, the best-selling comic book of 2016 was Black Panther #1, written by Ta-Nehisi Coates. So when the Black Panther movie came out and I saw in the credits that it thanked Ta-Nehisi Coates, I was telling everybody that I contributed to the Black Panther movie. I'm like, yeah, it's a drop in the ocean. It's like a drop in the ocean, but you know, I'm in there somewhere.
Hey, you inspired them, so there we go.
So yeah, Ta-Nehisi Coates is a cool guy. I mean, for him to write me that email at all, right, is very cool. LaMar, what does Black Panther mean to you?
Okay. Well, before I say that, since you brought up Ta-Nehisi Coates, I just want to let everybody know that Ta-Nehisi Coates was named after the Medu Neter terminology for what we call Nubia, because it was referred to as Ta-Nehisi. But for me, I'm trying to think the first Black Panther comic or the first comic with Black Panther in it that I remember reading. It wasn't actually the first appearance. Actually, I remember what it was. It was in his solo series, the one where he takes on a an amalgam for the, or not an amalgam, but he like a substitute group for the KKK. It's these guys that are like riding on horses, and they have these white outfits with the pointy hats or whatever. And I think they're actually referred to as the Klan with a C. That was the first one I remembered reading and actually seeing him in. And when you look at that cover, it's a very striking cover because there's all these guys on horseback and he's like in the middle of them and he's fighting them off and stuff like that. It was a really visceral image for me, even as a child, because I think I might have been like 6 or 7 when I saw that comic. And growing up where I grew up at in southeastern North Carolina, then this is in the 80s, in the early 80s. So the real Klan still had a presence there, and they still do, but it wasn't anything for us to actually see them like on back roads and stuff. So, and then hearing the stories that I grew up hearing from my mother and my grandmother, you know, peace be upon them, they're both ancestors. Uh, I don't know. It hit me. I guess maybe it hit me a little different than it would normally hit other people, I guess, who are just reading it and they might be like, "Hey, that's a really cool story," or you know, I can understand, you know, like what Black people may have gone through, but in a lot of ways, that was a reality for me. So seeing Black Panther fight these people that we were still fighting, I don't know, it did something to me, and I just had to like find all of the Black Panther comics. And so the next comic I got was the one where he beats up the Avengers. Now I know that sounds crazy for people who have never read it, but yeah, he beats up the Avengers. That's what happens, right? And then I found, you know, his first appearance where, you know, he beats up the Fantastic Four. I mean, and and I've been a fan of his ever since. And even like when maybe I felt like the writers didn't actually get him, you know, but more so like in the modern day, you actually have Black people who are writing Black Panther comics now, so it's a little closer to what it needs to be. But yeah, I've been a lifelong fan of Black Panther ever since I saw that cover with him fighting the Klan. Yeah, so he's always been a favorite of mine.
I think urban legend has it that Don McGregor, the writer, was told by editorial he needed to put more white people in the Black Panther comic. So he did. He created the Klan.
Yeah, I've heard that before, and shout out to Don McGregor if that's the case.
Very cool. There's a picture that was going around of Don McGregor shaking hands with Chadwick Boseman. I'm not. This should be obvious to anybody watching, but I'm the only guy here who isn't black. Uh, and
What? Really?
but I'm a Filipino, and that actually makes it so that uh, it's hard to find representation for Filipinos in pop culture aside from our local stuff. So when I see a movie like Black Panther come out, and I see how black people respond to it, and we've seen pictures of people dressed up in traditional African outfits going to see Black Panther, it makes me actually inspired. Well, not to make a Filipino thing, but like kind of hoping that would inspire something in the creative bubble. Um, Ironically, there is one thing in the year 2018 that kind of did that for Asians. It was another movie. I won't name what it is, but when I was thinking about it, I was like, I kind of wish we traded because you got the cool one. I like that movie too, but I mean, you guys got the cool
Yeah.
one.
I know the movie you're talking about. We ain't gonna say nothing.
But I mean, even that one had no Filipinos. Had a couple of Filipino actors, but none of the characters were Filipino. But I was seeing some things from my culture and from my from my upbringing that rang true. And if those small things could ring true to me, then I cannot even begin to understand what watching Black Panther, the movie, meant to you guys. So talk to me about what that was like, the lead up to the movie, and when the movie finally came out. Justin went first last time, so LaMar can go first this time.
Okay. It's different now than when we were children, because you didn't have all this, because of the internet and social media. You have all these like little sneak peeks and things into the way things work in movies and stuff. Whereas like in the early 80s when I was coming up, we didn't really have that. So you would get commercials, and then sometimes like you'd watch a show like Entertainment Tonight or something, and they would have little things where they're talking to the actors, and that was about it, and but now it's like anytime there's a development in a film, somebody's posting about it on Instagram or Twitter or something, so I think that particular aspect of the way the world works now when it comes to entertainment, it did a lot to help this movie, because when they started to roll out, when they that Black Panther was going to be in Civil War, people were like, okay, well, how do you kind of make that work or whatever, like what's it going to be like? So um, then once like people actually saw the suit, they were like, oh, whoa, like they're serious with this, like they're not playing games, right? And so then it becomes apparent as time goes on that Black Panther isn't just a side character in the movie, like he's a major part of the film. And which is even more amazing because you have all of these other characters who are, in the film, even though technically it's a Captain America movie,
Yeah, Civil War.
Yeah, Civil War. So and then when he actually is like on the scene and he's doing the Black Panther stuff, and you even have some of that from the comics where he's kind of standoffish in a way and aloof even when he's around other people and stuff. And he has a lot of really good one-liners in that movie, in the Civil War movie. But just actually seeing it and then coming out of the movie knowing that this is just a small taste of what you're going to get later, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so because of his appearance in Civil War, it was just this there was this it was steamrolled anticipation for his movie, you know. And seeing people go crazy about it, and it's not just black people. It's like everybody was like, "Man, I can't wait for this Black Panther jump to come out." You know what I mean? Like just seeing that, and so and just having to interact with people, and then you find out that man, there's a lot of people who just love Black Panther, and I just didn't know that, you know. And finding that out, it's just like, wow, so everybody's now we're trading stories and like, what's your favorite Black Panther story? What's your favorite Black Panther splash page? And that kind of stuff. Who's your favorite Black Panther villain? What's your favorite story? So it was cool to experience that. And then you go into the movie and then you're getting all of this, like, not just, you're getting African people in full display and African culture in full display, in a lot of ways for, comparatively speaking, when it comes down to a movie that's 2 hours long. So, and having people just in the theater, and there's all sorts of people, and
Mhm.
everybody's in there having a good time, they're having their minds blown, and then just having the conversations later where it's like, hey, listen, this part right here where they put this up, like that wasn't something for the movie. This is real. And let me show you here. You could look into this. Just having those sorts of interactions with people of all kinds. It was fantastic, but just like knowing that African people were at the center of this thing. Um, and it was a cultural phenomenon, you know? And
At the time, it was the highest grossing Marvel movie.
yeah, right. Yeah. Until
Till
you have Infinity War and Endgame and all of that.
and Infinity
Yeah.
War is supposed to outgross it.
Yeah, those movies are supposed to, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, so, but yeah, but it does hold the distinction of being the only Marvel film that was nominated for Best Picture, you know?
It's true.
So, uh, yeah, it was funny because it was a rush, and I think Just knows what I'm talking about when I say this. It was a rush of emotion, just having all of this stuff come about, and like, honestly, I had no frame of reference for even to how to expect something like that, because you're used to getting kind of like cast to the side. You know what I mean? So, from a cultural standpoint. So just to be able to see that and to say, hey, listen, people are actually interested in this stuff. This stuff is viable. Everything doesn't have to be about, just, these archetypes that America has created for white people. Like, it doesn't have to be that way. Like, we can be put on display and we can do what we do, and we can do it just as good, as not better than anybody.
Justin?
Yeah. So I was actually in Afghanistan when Black Panther was released, and somehow they got like a terrible bootleg copy of it, and they showed it at the community center, for us to go and watch. And the theater probably held about maybe 50 people or something like that, and I can tell you, there was not an empty seat in the community center, and this was Afghanistan. We got bombs and stuff going off over the heads and everything like that. People were standing in the aisles just to watch this movie of terrible quality, which obviously people always get excited for Marvel movies. I know when I got back to the States, I saw it another 3 times. On top of that, I went by myself, then I took my daughters, and then we took a family trip, with my nieces and nephews and my brother, and we all took them to go and see it. And then it was, like LaMar was saying, if you like on Facebook and, you would see people in their African garb and they're in the theaters and they're, dancing and dressing and having a good time. And it was just like, it was so surreal of a feeling, like this is what this one particular character brought to so many, Black Americans. It was just joy and happiness to be able to see someone that looked like you on the screen, not being a thug or anything like that. This man was royalty. He was an actual king. He carried himself as a king. The cast was phenomenal, just everything. They brought a beauty to Africa that we don't get to see in any form of media and everything like that. So to be, Black African American in this scene, that it was a very prideful moment. I mean, you could not be any more proud in those moments to see that the dynamics are changing and showing that, a Black actor, Chadwick Boseman, in a Black cast can carry a Hollywood blockbuster like that. And that sets the stage moving forward for other films, to where one day there is going to be a movie with a Filipino lead or a Chinese lead or something like that. And so it just kind of sets the stage. We know the dynamics of Hollywood are changing. And, I don't want to say that it started with that, but I would say that Black Panther, that movie, had a lot to do with it. You know, people are now going to be able to say, hey, we can have a black lead in an all black cast and make a good Hollywood blockbuster. And it's a real, very proud moment.
Yeah, I think the moment for me that made me realize it was a celebration of African culture was before before that scene where he gets crowned king, and everyone's just in their different colored clothes and dancing. Like that was when I realized, like, oh, this is gonna be a different movie.
Yeah, the different tribes coming together and celebration and everything like that. I mean, because we're always told, you know, oh, Africans, they fight each other, they don't like each other, and this, that, and the other. But you saw them all coming together from different tribes celebrating, and that is a reality in Africa. And so to be able to capture that in film was pretty good.
Also, like you're also told that you're all the same, and you're not. Like
Yeah, exactly. We're not a monolith. We are all individuals. We all have our differences and stuff like that. But we can come together as people, which was shown in that movie.
And that was also to me what really set the movie apart from what I saw, because there are people who try to take the movie down by saying, oh yeah, there's been movies with black leads, Spawn, Blade, and all good movies, all fine. I love Spawn, but it's different, right?
It's very different. So, you know, obviously Spawn is based on a comic book character. They all are. Spawn's based on a comic book character, but it's a different under a different brand. It's what Image, I believe it is. I'm not real familiar with Spawn, but even Blade, when it came out, didn't fly under the banner of the MCU. It was a New Line Cinema film. I think probably like in the credits, you may have seen something that said, you know, hey, Marvel Comics. And if you weren't familiar with Blade in the Marvel Comics, all you knew was that it was a vampire movie. But with the way the MCU is built, I mean, it's this huge mega universe, and you have a character like Black Panther, like at the forefront of this. You know, it's not just a singular film, it's an entity of films. And that's what makes it different, because it's part of a larger picture. It's not just a singular film. It's, hey, this is a part of the story that's going to go on for years and years and years. So that's why I think the difference was. I don't think it was the fact that having the first black superhero, but having the first black hero in a film that's based in a larger grand scheme of things to come.
And also LaMar being the first black superhero surrounded by a black supporting cast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not only that, the movie is basically told from an African perspective. So all of this stuff is happening within an African nation, is the most technologically advanced nation on the planet, and in a lot of ways, like Just was saying earlier, you had all of these different peoples who live in Wakanda and stuff like that. So really, what it was also, it was basically they took all of Africa and put it into one place so that you could see it on the screen. So in a lot of ways, it's a celebration of the entire continent that had never been done before, you know? And just for that alone, the movie would be culturally relevant, even if it wasn't a good movie, which it is. It's a fantastic film. And um, for a film to be based on a comic, it's almost like it's ironic because, you know, comic books, you know, superhero comics is, you know, it's fantasy, right? So it's almost like for people to be able to accept that African people are capable of what we're capable of, and that we've done what we've done, they had to put it in a fantasy setting, because if they tried to put it in a historical setting, it's almost like nobody would believe it. So that speaks to what's been done to us over the years, you know. And it just sometimes I get emotional like watching that movie and subsequent views because it's like, man, if somebody tried to do a historical piece on uh on like Taharqua, for example, uh, it wouldn't be looked at like this because Taharqua was a real person who did real things. He's one of our greatest leaders, and you know it wouldn't be met the same way probably as Black Panther is met. And I think just the irony of that, you know, it stings a little bit sometimes. You know.
Hmm. I get that. Talk to me about Chadwick and how he portrayed Black Panther. Like, what are the words that come to your mind when you think about his portrayal?
So for me, when I thought about it, and I hate that I'm had to do this comparison, but I think what Chadwick Boseman did for Black Panther is similar to what Heath Ledger did for Joker. Like he really set the bar for that character. And so I know after he passed, you know, a lot of people were, you know, initially they were in the morning and stuff like that. And then there was like, hey, Marvel, don't recast him, you know, try to figure something else out and everything like that. I think it would be hard to recast that part just because of how iconic it has become and what he was able to do for that character. You know, obviously they, you know, with Heath Ledger, they end up doing another, you know, Joker with Jared Leto, but it didn't pan out with fans the way that, you know, the Heath Ledger role did. And so I would hate for them to try that with Black Panther and get the same type of response. I don't think that, I mean, I'm sure that they probably had some contingencies. Like you said, you know, he was diagnosed in 2016 and everything like that. And I'm sure Marvel may have known and had some contingency plans, you know, laid out for in the event that this happened. But just what he did for that role, it was iconic. I mean, there's nothing else you can say to it. And you know, we got to see it in Civil War, obviously Black Panther, and then the Infinity Wars movies. And so we only got to see him in the four settings. But it'd be hard pressed to move forward with someone else playing that role. I think Chadwick Boseman, he nailed it, he owned it, and I don't know if you can ever replace that.
LaMar?
You know, because I was familiar with Chadwick Boseman's work before that, and also I was familiar with some of his stands on social justice. You know, like so, like for example, he played a character on a soap opera, and he felt like he was being stereotyped, and when he brought it up, he got fired, right? And so, just those kinds of things. And I've been a fan of his work, and it was funny when I heard about he was going to play James Brown, and I was like, he's going to play James Brown. Like, I don't know how that's going to work, right? But when he actually played James Brown, like he played James Brown. Like I was like, wow, like he totally transformed himself. Like even though he doesn't look anything like James Brown, so I guess you know it's like, yo, I can't rely on that because I don't have a resemblance to him. So I'm gonna have to embody everything else about him. So and he did that. Like, you know, we can say whatever we want to say about the quality of the movie, but his performance was magnificent. So I was like, okay, they're gonna get this guy to play Black Panther. Um, we already know he can act, so I'm not even worried about that part. Because usually, a lot of times, they'll get somebody who looks a certain part, or even they'll get somebody who's been in a whole lot of other stuff for the star power. But I think this time they went with somebody who could actually act, and that's a rarity amongst these movies because a lot of times it's either based on a physical likeness or like on the power of or the drawing power of the name. But for him, it was based on the acting ability, right? So apparently, you know, because I didn't know we were going to get a Black Panther movie a few years later. So, you know, obviously there was something that they saw in him that they were like, you know what, this guy can handle this. So we're going to give it to him. We're going to run with it. And so And at first, though, I figured when they started talking about making a the Panther movie, they ended up giving it to they I thought they were gonna go with the actor that ultimately ended up playing in Doctor Strange. I always slaughter his name. Everybody just calls him Chewie, you know. But yeah, I because I thought that he would have been a good pick, right? But they wanted, I guess they wanted to skew a little younger, and which I understand that if you're doing a franchise like, and you're gonna do like two and three, like I get that. But yeah, by the time but when I sat down and watched the actual film, the Black Panther film, and I was like, wow. And they gave him a lot to work with, and he nailed it. Like the entire cast was fantastic, but everything they gave to him, like he sold all of it, you know. And usually, sometimes you'll come away and you'll be like, well, yeah, he probably could have done this part a little better, or when he did it like this. Uh, I didn't feel that way in any part of that movie, you know. So like to speak to what Just was saying about Heath Ledger, like this dude is Black Panther, you know, um, and he always will be, you know. So it was a really, in a lot of ways, it was a transcendent performance, you know. And we have those like in comic book films. There's a string of them that we have these transcendent performances, and we could just go down the line and just start nailing them. But and we're really fortunate in this um in the contemporary time. We're fortunate because we've had quite a few of them, even within Marvel. Just in Marvel, you've had quite a few of them. Um, and but I think though that his is probably the most important because his was the one he had the most writing on his, number one, and number two is solely based on his acting ability. I don't know if I can say that for any of the other people.
Yeah, for me, what I'll say about it is that in Black Panther, there's several characters that are more. There's several actors that are like more eccentric, maybe more. Maybe the way they act will stand out to you more the first time around. Michael B. Jordan, uh, Letitia Wright, who plays Shuri. They're very distinct. And what he has to do is he has to anchor all of these really extreme performances. Uh, the guy who plays M'Baku, who
Mhm.
so he's got to play off of all of those, and I thought that was really impressive. You mentioned Heath Ledger. To me, was actually more like Christopher Reeve as Superman.
Yeah,
Uh,
I thought about that too. Christopher Reeves playing Superman was also one of those iconic roles that, when you think of Superman, the first person that pops into your head is Christopher Reeves.
Christopher
It's
Reeve,
like,
yeah.
oh, who's Superman? Christopher Reeves. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, and it's funny because like, and that's why I brought up the transcendent performances, because it's like Christopher Reeve was so good as Superman that people will just say that other people are better just so that he don't have to be the best Superman anymore. Like that's how great his performance is. So I can see people doing this like down the line, like, oh well, who had the greatest performance in the Marvel movies? And when people say Chadwick Boseman, they'd be like, "Oh man, you just saying that because he's dead." It's like, no, we're not saying that because he's dead, right? So you know what I mean? And that's how you know you have something, when people do that kind of stuff, right? You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Because you don't have naysayers if you haven't done anything, you know?
Yeah, and like for me, as I was watching the movie, his acting is a little more subtle, but then there's that one moment in the spirit world where he tells the elders that they're wrong, and he's yelling at them, and I was like, "Holy crap, this guy is a fantastic actor."
Hmm.
yeah, he was able to turn that one on, and it was
Yeah.
emotional if you were sitting there watching it, him having that back and forth with his father and getting emotional about it and stuff like that. You couldn't help but to feel, something yourself, like, man, he's really hurting right now. It's like the episode of Fresh Prince when him and Uncle Phil had the back and forth with his dad left
Yeah.
and didn't want to be
Yeah.
there. It's almost similar to that, where it's like, oh man, was he going through something at that point in time that he was able to draw on and just bring it out, and he killed it. He killed it.
Hmm.
And of course, the answer, as we know, is that Chadwick Boseman was in fact going through something,
Hmm. Yeah.
which is really sad. But he killed it. And for me, also another thing that I want to point out was going into Endgame. Um, I was figuring that Iron Man and Captain America and maybe Thor would kind of be shuffled off to the side at that point. And I was wondering who was gonna replace them in terms of their roles in the MCU, not necessarily replace them like Falcon will replace Captain America and War Machine will replace Iron Man. But just in terms of their roles, I was like, okay, so Thor will probably be replaced by Captain Marvel because we're talking about power. And Iron Man's probably going to be replaced by what's his name? Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange. Yeah.
Because we've been hearing about that for a while. And of the remaining guys, Cumberbatch was the biggest actor. And I was like, well, then Captain America has to be replaced by Black Panther because as different as they are as characters, they gave me that same kind of feeling of inspiration and hope, even though they're completely different characters. So,
I think it's their ability to lead. I mean, Cap, right there in the forefront, being a leader and everything like that. And yes, they are very different, but Black Panther also having those same qualities, being able to lead and carry a team like that. I think that's one of those things that you kind of look at the similarities and how they're going to move forward with who was, kind of going in the forefront of those characters being kind of moved to the side and going into the next sets of phases of the MCU.
Yeah, the two of them doing the lead in Infinity War, where they're leading the charge. There's also in Endgame when the portals open, Panther's the first one out. So there was that. What has Black Panther meant? I mean, we basically answered a lot of this, but what has Black Panther meant to the Black community as well as to your local communities? I'll just point out here that I only learned over the weekend how much he means to children. So I'm gonna start with you, Justin. How did you break the news to your kids?
So I broke the news to my wife first, and it was shortly after we had did our X-Men podcast. And Ben Smith hit me up on Messenger and said, "Hey, Chadwick Boseman died," and it was just immediate. Like, what? It was almost like January 2020 when Kobe passed. It was like, no, this cannot be real right now. And so immediately my heart dropped into my stomach. I flipped to Facebook. I went to go and find, I found it, and I went and I told my wife, and she was just like, what? Just kind of that shock and awe. And the first person I told was my oldest daughter, because she had came downstairs from doing some chores or something like that. And she could just see in my face that I look sick. And she was like, what's wrong? And I was like, Chadwick Boseman died. And she was like, Black Panther? I was like, yeah. And she just was like, same. She had the same kind of sick look on her face. And then my middle daughter, when she came down, she came to say, hey, did you hear about the guy that plays Black Panther? And I was like, yeah. And she was just like, man, that's sad. And, so it kind of tore up our household a little bit and everything like that. And then going to what you were saying with the kids, being able to tell them, just last night, I was just, surfing Facebook, and I went to BET.com, and it was talking about how some parents were having a hard time explaining it to their children that he had passed. And to me, that goes to show how significant and iconic he was that, I feel like if you're, having to tell your child like a family member passed is hard, but you're telling them an actor that played a character who they've grown to love is just as difficult. That definitely shows that he was significant for the culture and for, Black people all over the world.
Mm-hmm. Anything else you meant to your local community over there, or?
I didn't see a whole lot. I know, like I said, when the movie came out, I was in Afghanistan. And then when I came home, you would see obviously like the Walmart displays and everything like that. I don't remember them doing a whole lot of like celebrations of it or anything like that around here, because like I said, I wasn't here. Most of everything that I saw was just through Facebook and everything like that. So as far as here in the local community, I didn't see a whole lot going on that was to celebrate that movie when it came out.
LaMar, you work with children.
Yeah. And you know, I can remember there was a particular time where I went into the school, and the school that I volunteer at, it's pretty much it's in a predominantly black neighborhood, and the staff is predominantly black. The administrative team is all black. They're all black women. Everybody in the office is a black woman. So I went in there and I started talking to the children about Kemet, and I asked them where Egypt was, and I used Egypt specifically because I knew that they had heard of that. And so, these are like children in the first grade, and most of them didn't know, and then I think somebody said the Middle East, right? So then I had to tell them that there's, really no such thing as a place called the Middle East. That's a term that they came up with 100 years ago. And what they used that to separate Kemet from Africa, right? So then I had to point to them on the map, and I showed them where it was. And I was like, listen, this is where your people come from. These children had no idea of that because nobody had ever told them that. And so they were literally looking at me. They were like, I remember one little boy was like, "Are you serious?" And I was like, "Yes." And so we started talking about Africa a little bit, and then one child in the back, he stands up and he's like, "You mean like the Black Panther?" And I was like, "Yes, like the Black Panther. Yes." Yes, you come from the same people as the Black Panther. And if you want to be the Black Panther, you can do that, you know? And so I had never had that happen before. So Black Panther as a character and the sense of grandeur that went along with that movie, it actually showed these children sides of themselves that they had never been exposed to, you know? And I started to think about, not to get political or anything, but for at least for an 8 year stretch, you think about it now, like when Barack Obama was president. For those 8 years, the children born within that 8 year time span, the only president they ever knew was a black man. There's power in that, regardless of what his policies might have been or whatever. There's power in that, you know. And for the Black Panther, it's the same thing. And so these children were able to identify with the part of themselves that's the most important solely because of that movie. So that movie will always have value. And I know, and of course, in the days, the subsequent days after the passing of our brother, um, you've always got the naysayers who come out on social media and they're like, "Oh, he's just a guy that was in a movie. He's just an actor," and all of that. It's like, hey, listen, man, James Dean was just an actor, right? John Wayne was just an actor. You know what I'm saying? Like all of these people, y'all the same people that was boo-hooing over Heath Ledger and stuff and talking about how much he meant to your life. Now all of a sudden, when it's Chadwick Boseman, oh, he's just an actor, you know? And so it's like, man, we know what that is, man. We know what that is. So, you can just kind of, because you develop thick skin for stuff like this after a while. So but but
You know
like
exactly
going
what
back to
it
what,
is. Yeah. You know what it
yeah,
is.
yeah. And it's like what he meant to children, like what you were just saying. Um, and these are children, like I've literally been on the playgrounds at the schools and see children talking about they want to play the Avengers, right? And they're trying to beat this, and that's how it is. You decide who's going to be who. And then the first word out of their mouth is, "I'm Black Panther," like that, right? And so the next thing I know, like there was one time I was on the playground, I had to break up a fight between two second graders because they were fighting over who was going to be Black Panther. Well, actually, it was three because one of the boys was black, one was white, and the other one, uh, he was Latinx. You know what I mean? So y'all are fighting over who's going to be Black Panther. Like when I was a little boy, it probably would have been we're going to fight over who's going to be Captain America. You know what I mean? But they were like, "No, I'm Black Panther." He's like, "No, you're not. I am. No, you're not. I am." So I was like, "All right, man, y'all chill, man. Y'all chill. Y'all, go get on the jungle gym or something." You know what I mean? But you know, yeah, just to have that kind of
That
of
that
vis-
that says something too. That
yeah,
non-black kids want to be Black Panther,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, and I know that there's some low down people in this country right now that's mad that they go in on their child's wall and there's a picture of Black Panther
Yeah.
where they would have had Elvis or something on the wall, but it's like, God dang, I gotta buy the stuff, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, that's probably the most enduring aspect of his performance in those movies is the effect that it had on the children, and he'll always have that effect on the children. You know.
Yeah, that was the thing for me is when he passed, I was like, oh, but he means so much to the Black community. And at the time, I was talking to a couple of people, and one of them said, at the time that it happened, I was talking to a couple of people, um, and one of them said, oh, you mean so much to children. And I actually said, oh, you mean Black children? And then she said, no, I mean children. Like
I
children.
think Ben said one of his sons, Black Panther, is his favorite character. I don't know if it's Parker or if it's his younger son, but
It's his younger son, Palmer.
it's his young. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's able to. I mean, that character was able to bridge a lot of gaps, and everything like that. Where you do have the white kids saying, "No, I'm Black Panther. I'm Black Panther," and everything like that. And it's a pretty good feeling. It's odd, but it's like, all right, go ahead, little guy. If you want to be Black Panther, go ahead.
It also kind of shows that something like racism is taught, right? Because like if kids,
Yes, exactly,
Of course.
exactly.
Yeah.
like you have to be taught to not want to be that character for something. I want to talk about Simu Liu. I hope I said his name right. Simu Liu is the director of Shang-Chi, the upcoming Shang-Chi movie. And he had a tweet. I'll just read it out loud. He said, I want to be crystal clear. Without Chadwick and what he gave to his character, there is no Shang-Chi, period. My career rides on the coattails of a great man. I wish I would have had the opportunity to tell him in person, but I'll fight for him always, my eternal king. So it wasn't even, like I said, it's not just for the Black community. It's all, I wanted to say all the doors he opened, but in a callback to the last line of the movie, I will say it's all about the bridges he built. Chadwick Boseman built bridges and created opportunities for people. Let's get to this. What is Chadwick Boseman's legacy to the world? So this really bugged me, and LaMar, you mentioned this. There was an article in one of the legitimate news websites basically saying, oh, Chadwick Boseman would have been an on-screen legend. And I'm like, Chadwick Boseman is an on-screen legend. Chadwick Boseman is hanging up in walls. Chadwick Boseman is inspiring to people. He is a legend. Like I can't name a single role that James Dean played. Like I can't name any of his characters. He played like 3 roles in his life. So, I mean, for anyone to say that James Dean deserves a legend status and Chadwick Boseman doesn't, yeah, we know what that is. So, but yeah, what is his legacy to the rest of the world?
Is that me or LaMar? I'm sorry.
Either
or. His legacy, I mean, like you said, he is a legend. And, when you look at him, not just from the perspective of the Black Panther film, LaMar mentioned he played James Brown, the Godfather of Soul. He also played Jackie Robinson, the first Black man in the majors. He also played Thurgood Marshall, the first Supreme Court Justice of the United States. All 3 of those historical figures that he's played, and he put his mark on it. And it's like right there, I just gave you 3 films. You said you couldn't name 3 of James Dean's. I gave you 3 outside of Black Panther. Oh, what about, he also did 21 Bridges. Good movie if you haven't seen it. I hadn't seen Guys of Egypt or anything like that, but he was also in that one. So what he was able to do in the short amount of time, and I think that's probably where a lot of the trolls are coming from, is that he doesn't have a long, filmography or something like that. But the roles that he did take on and he did, tackle were very impactful for, first and foremost, the Black community. Like I said, James Brown, Jackie Robinson, Thurgood Marshall, those are all people that, kids are writing book reports about, in school and stuff like that. And then obviously Black Panther, I mean, legend status, he's more than earned it with what he was able to do in those films, just because, those trolls out there can't appreciate what he has done for people of color, then, you know, that's their problem. That's their issue. They're missing out on what, you know, are some great films and some things that can put perspective in their lives. You know, they're the ones missing out, you know, they're saying that he's not a legend or anything like that. So that's on them.
LaMar, I know you want to say something about Gods of Egypt.
Oh yeah, let me say this real quick. Well, just I'm gonna just go ahead and tell you now, you don't have to watch that movie, man.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
heard it
you ain't gotta
wasn't that
watch it.
great or anything
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, that movie was so bad. You know, nobody wanted to go see that movie. Like, I think they pulled it like early, like it wasn't in the theaters that long. But Chadwick Boseman, to his credit, not just as an actor but as a person, he took the role of Jehuti, who he's billed as Thoth in the movie because that's what the Greeks call him. But he got the role of Jehuti and he auditioned for that role because it was important to him for people to see an African man who was the inventor of writing, of mathematics, of science, and all of these things. Because Jehuti represents you know, articulate speech, articulate thought, and things like that. So that was the only reason why he accepted that role, is because he wanted black people and other people to see black people as being in this role of being supremely intelligent and things like that, you know. So it was important to him just for that reason, and he put himself through all of that garbage just so he could do that for people. It says a lot about his character, you know. It really, really does.
He knew the movie was going to be bad.
Yeah, yeah. I think kind of going in, when you get the script and you see who's playing who, you know, it's like, okay, yeah, this is crazy. This is crazy, you know. But it's funny because, you know, the Egyptian government and stuff like that, they cried foul of the movie, but it's like, yo, that's not y'all. Y'all know that, but that's a talk for another time. But but we won't get into that right now. But yeah, yeah. Even they objected. And they were like, man, this is crazy. But but yeah, just, you know, and you talk about taking it on the chin, and he wasn't even really like an established star yet, but ultimately, that role actually helped him get the role as Black Panther. So, but yeah, that speaks volumes about the kind of man he was and where his principles lie.
And his legacy?
Man, listen, I'm gonna just go ahead and say it like this. Everybody want to say, oh, he's just an actor, he didn't really do anything. Um, you know, he didn't do anything, he didn't contribute anything to the world. He was just in a couple movies, and the movies weren't all that good, and you know, he's not a legend. It's like, yo, nobody asked you, no way. Thanks for that unsolicited import, right? That's pretty much how I feel about it, right? Nobody asked you, nobody cares what you think. All right. When these children are standing up and they are taking the posture of Usia and doing this in school with their friends, and you know, their friends of all nationalities are doing it with them, that speaks louder than you know.
I'm going to point out, sorry to interrupt you. I'm going to point out there's
Yeah.
a couple of viral tweets that have gone out, a couple of children you know, doing the Wakanda Forever sign, and one of them is this black kid who has all of his toys lined up, his Avengers toys lined up, and Black Panther's in the middle laying down, and the other one is the same kind of thing. And I'm gonna bet anything the kid in that is a Filipino. So that, just if you want to show
I've
how
seen that one. Yeah.
that is,
I
because
know exactly what you're talking about.
I've seen a bunch of them that were like that, and I saw one was actually a video where they had not only like the Avengers characters, they had like all of the Marvel characters kind of lined up in this scene, and they had Black Panther laid out with a white blanket over him and everything like that. I mean, that was pretty cool. And some of those, like watching them again, you can't help but to get choked up.
yeah,
That those kids were feeling that kind of emotion, you know, about, you know, that character and everything like that. So, you know, like LaMar said, like I said, you know, the hate and the negativity is not warranted. It's not necessary. You know, if you don't like him, if you didn't feel like he was a legend or whatever the case may be, keep your opinion to yourself. But for those that love him, adore him, and appreciate what he did and the bridges that he built, you know, he can't be thanked enough for that.
I mean, I couldn't even wait a few days before they said things like they started bringing him down.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. It's like, yeah, immediately. Like they go in and do the stuff. You know what I mean? And it's always like that. But you're not allowed to say that John Wayne is a racist when he's on record as being a racist. Like he admitted it. But you're not allowed to say that though. You know what I mean? Because it's John Wayne, right? And John Wayne is a guy who literally has done nothing for anybody but play in movies. You see what I'm saying to you? So that's why, man, that stuff don't have no value, you know?
Yeah, I interrupted you though. So like, you were saying something about Chadwick's legacy aside from
Okay. No, that was a good segue though. I think that needed to be put in there. But yeah, man, when you have a guy who was as devoted to acting as he was and was as devoted to his craft, and he used his craft for the betterment of his people, and a lot of times some people are just really selective about the roles they take, right? So for him, because there was a time period where he decided that, he was like, man, maybe this just ain't for me, man. I'm gonna try to get behind the camera and develop my directing ability, and maybe I'll do that. But I'm so glad that he didn't take that position, because like you said, not only do we have Black Panther, we got James Brown. He played Thurgood Marshall. He played um
Jackie
Jackie
Robinson.
Robinson. He also played in the movie The Express. He played Ernie Davis, the first uh and that's an excellent movie too. Uh it came out like in 2007, 2008 or something like that. But yeah, that's a good one. He was the first black guy to win the Heisman Trophy. And that's an excellent movie if nobody's ever seen it. He was amazing in that. And so you know, imagery is important, right? And being able to see yourself doing things that are great when you've been told all your life that you're not great and that you can't be great. Those things mean something to people. And this guy has a body of work that people can just literally sit down with their children in a weekend and say, hey, listen, if this what you want to do, this right here, follow this guy's path, right? Um, and just to be able to see all of the greatness that just came from him and the parts that he picked, like that's amazing. It really, really is. And for these children to come along, and it's also good affirmation for people like myself, because when you out here dealing with this stuff, man, every single day, it beats you down. So sometimes it's good to just be able to throw on 42, for example, and just, and get something to kind of lift your spirits, and then it keeps you going. We all need that. All the peoples of the world need that.
Yeah. Anything else to say about Chadwick? I mean, the next question was going to be which movies would you recommend, but I think we covered that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go check out that Express. I had heard about it, but I never seen it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's
I'm
good.
definitely go find that and make that a weekend movie to watch.
For me, I think the weirdest thing was Jackie Robinson Day is normally April 15th. This year they moved it to August 28th because of the pandemic. And Chadwick passed away on the same day. And so it also happens to be the birthday of Jack Kirby, co-creator of T'Challa, the Black Panther. So it's really weird because if you wrote that into a story, you would get criticized for it being too coincidental.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's the way it works sometimes in the year 2020 when things like it's just weird, right? It's weird. The year 2020 sucks, and this one hit really hard. Anything else you want to say? Otherwise, we can go to the closing, LaMar. Anything else?
I just want to say, rest in power to Chadwick Boseman. My condolences to his wife, his friends, and his family. Like I said, as a fan, I didn't know him personally, but he did impact my life in a positive way. I'll always be thankful for him, for his role and portrayal, not only as Black Panther, but the other movies that we also mentioned. So he will be missed. So rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah. A lot of people, Chadwick Boseman isn't the only person who passed away or in the last year or anything. We cannot do a video like this for every notable person who does. We just can't. It wouldn't be sustainable. But this one was important. And yeah, this one was important, and we'd have done it sooner if we could. But the fact is, we're doing it now. So yeah, so this one, Chadwick Boseman was important, and anyone who says he wasn't, you just got to get out.
Rocks.
You got to get out of your bubbles, guys. Like, talk to some kids out there.
Yeah.
LaMar, close this off. Talk about Chadwick Boseman, and then close this off.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna back up your sentiment about, talk to some children. Some of y'all, that's exactly what you should be doing on a regular basis anyway. Talk to some children, man. If you feel like you gotta come out here and do this kind of stuff every time somebody has something and it's not directly reflecting you, man, just talk to some children, man. Bring yourself back down a little bit. You know what I mean? You can learn a lot from them. But the last thing I wanted to say is that, of course, rest in power to our brother. May he fly on the wings of Ra for eternal life. And those of us who are in this for real will carry your standard and your work forward.
Rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman.
Okay, now I'm going to read from the pyramid text, which is the oldest body. The oldest one is the oldest corpus of spiritual literature anywhere in the world. So we also created that. So I'm going to read from this section of the pyramid text of Pepi the First. It's entitled Joining the Necharu. And it reads as, someone has gone up. I have gone up. The Lady of Depth becomes excited. The mind of her in the midst of Nekeb becomes carefree on the day that I have gone up into the place of the sun. I have laid down for myself that sunlight of yours as a footpath under my feet, that I might go up, it to where my mother is, that living Uraeus atop the sun. Her mind is sick for me, and she gives me her breast that I might suckle. My son, she says, accepted this my breast and suckle. She says, since you have not come yet to the full number of your days as a baby. The sky speaks, the earth shakes. The gods of Heliopolis quiver at the sound of the offering presented before me. My mother Bastet has taken me. She in the midst of Nekeb has nurtured me, and she in the midst of depth gives her arms toward me. Look, I have come. Look, I have come. Look, I have come forth. I make my purification with fig wine and wine from the vine of the Netcher, and my personal knife sharpener makes a meal from them. When I go, my capture. My sweat is the sweat of Heru. My scent is the scent of Heru. To the sky, amongst the emergent Necharu. I am off to the sky amongst the emergent Necharu.
Ashe.